Thank you very much, Nadine and Amar and everybody, Marie, everybody who's involved in bringing me here. Thank you very much. I do crisscross the US. I'm based in Seattle and I travel all across the US speaking about Palestine. But it's always most meaningful to me to be here in Canada for Israeli Apartheid Week because this is where Israeli Apartheid Week started. Israeli Apartheid Week started in Canada and has since blossomed to go to so many cities and countries around the world. It is at the University of Toronto 8 years ago, a small student group organized a week-long series and didn't know what it was going to grow into. And it is as a result of this one small student group initiative on one campus that today, in 2012, the count hasn't come in yet, so we don't know how many, but it is over 100 cities. Last year, because people are reporting as they organize Apartheid Week, and then they report it to the national coordinators. So last year, in 2011, 97 cities participated in Israeli Apartheid Week, just starting from 8 years ago, one campus. So I generally begin my Israeli Apartheid Week talk with a reminder of its humble, small origins, not because we don't know about these, but as a reminder of the role that a small group of people can do, the global reach that a small group of committed citizens, in the words of Margaret Mead, never doubt what a small group of committed citizens can do. Indeed, it's only a small group of people can change the world. Because as we try to end apartheid, we are indeed trying to change the world. We are all, as people, getting involved and getting active and getting educated to end apartheid, and that is a global reach, and it's a global reach that started with a very small group 8 years ago. So I'm assuming that most of you do know what Israeli Apartheid Week is, but I also would like to think that some of you are new to this, because the point of Israeli Apartheid Week is that it grows and grows and educates more people. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Israeli Apartheid Week. For the newcomers, and I do hope that there are newcomers here. When the first Israeli Apartheid Week was launched 8 years ago, the organizers of the event debated for quite a while on what to name it. They thought maybe we should call it Palestine Awareness Week. And then they thought, no, because Palestine Awareness Week the awareness becomes of Palestine rather than of Israel and Israel's violations of international law. Then they thought, well, maybe we should call it Israeli Occupation Week. And again, they thought, no, Israeli Occupation Week is not a strategic title because everyone is aware of the occupation. In fact, Zionists, even Zionists say the occupation is the problem. Most Zionists, there are some who think that there's not enough occupation, but liberal Zionists do realize that the occupation is a problem. They are willing to discuss that. So whether we call it Palestine Awareness Week or Israeli Occupation Week, it is not pointing in the direction of what needs to be, what we need awareness of, namely the fact that Israel is an apartheid state. So they decided on calling it Israeli Apartheid Week because the apartheid system in Israel is what there is least awareness of, and it is what the world needs to become aware of in order to fix it. It's not end the occupation, which would only solve part of the problem. It's not Palestine awareness, because the whole idea of Palestine as a land without a people for people without a land, that's long gone. So there was this attempt for the longest time to humanize the Palestinians, to have us tell our oral stories, our narratives, we exist, there was a people, we're refugees. None of that, So not Palestine awareness, not Israeli occupation, but Israeli Apartheid Week. And that puts the focus on the reality of Israel's system. So 8 years later, this is the eighth year of Israeli Apartheid Week, and this year the organizers have decided that the theme of this year's Israeli Apartheid Week, everywhere that it's organized in 100-some cities around the world, the theme is going to be one collective concept, which is BDS, the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions Movement. So I think it's really important as I begin to discuss both the term apartheid as well as the strategy, BDS, in order to understand what this is about. So most people associate apartheid with the system that was in South Africa from 1948 until 1994. However, we need to keep in mind that South Africa, sadly, does not have the monopoly on apartheid. Israel is very, very, very aggravated by the term apartheid. It's the one thing, occupation, okay, but the term apartheid is extremely aggravating to Israel because it's a crime against humanity, basically, by both the International Criminal Court as well as the United Nations define apartheid as a crime against humanity. So Israel does not want to be portrayed as an apartheid state, and what Israel does in order to defend itself is it constantly points to differences between its system and South Africa. And indeed, there are differences. So Israel tells us things like, Palestinians can vote and blacks couldn't, or we have 2 Palestinian members of Knesset. Those are not the criteria which determine whether a system qualifies as apartheid or not. The criteria are in the definition, which I am now going to get on the screen, at the touch of a screen. And so it's very important to look at the criteria and see if the criteria, as in the definition, if these apply, then it is apartheid. So here's the definition of apartheid according to the United Nations General Assembly in 1973. Apartheid is inhuman acts committed for the, inhuman acts committed for the purpose of establishing and maintaining domination by one racial group of persons over any other racial group of persons and systematically oppressing them. That is the definition of apartheid according to the United Nations General Assembly in 1973. It does not say you have to be identical to South Africa. It says inhuman acts committed for the purposes of establishing and maintaining domination by one racial group of persons over any other racial group of persons and systematically oppressing them. We know that as Israel wants to be the Jewish state and privileges Jewish citizens over non-Jewish citizens, Israel, and has a whole system, the whole infrastructure and, everything about Israel. There are legal ways and non-legal ways that Israel discriminates against the non-Jewish citizens in ways that completely disenfranchise them. Therefore, that definition, okay. How do I get to the next screen? If you just show me how to move to the next one, then I'll know how to do the rest. Okay. So the other definition of, there's a more recent definition of apartheid, which is the International Criminal Court in 2002. And obviously, as we look at this, it's practically one and the same. It's just that a different court has also decided, let's look at how we define apartheid. Apartheid, according to the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court in 2002, is acts committed in the context of an institutionalized regime of systematic oppression and domination by one racial group over any other racial group or groups, and committed with the intention of maintaining that regime. Again, when we look at what's going on in Israel, which wants to be a Jewish state, privileging Jewish people with so many rules, so many laws that privilege Jews and disenfranchise Palestinians and take, extreme violations of the most basic, inalienable human rights of the Palestinians, what we see is a whole country whose legal system is set up to privilege one racial group, the Jews, and oppress and maintain the oppression of the other group, Palestinians. So finding differences in systems, which is the Israeli defense line, finding differences in the systems to deny that they are manifestations of one and the same crime would mean, for example, by that logic, that only one genocide has ever happened in the history of the world. Because, for example, if we want to take the Nazi Holocaust as a model of genocide, well, there were gas chambers, and that's the only genocide in which gas chambers were used. Therefore, there has been no Rwandan genocide, no Serbian genocide, no Armenian genocide. That's if we take that as our model. And we know that there have been other genocides. If we take, for example, on the other hand, if we want to take Sudan as a genocide, as a model of genocide, or Rwanda, the Tutsis and the Hutus, or Serbia, we know that in those 3 cases of genocide, there were orchestrated mass gang rapes of women. You know, like, for example, in Rwanda, the soldiers were ordered as part of the war. 7 soldiers would have to rape a woman, and that was basically a way of, ensuring that she gets HIV, that she gets infected with HIV, and also possibly killing her. I mean, gang rape, 7 soldiers killing a woman, but it was intentional. And that's rape as a weapon of war has existed in many of the genocides. So if we want to say a genocide includes rape as a mass gang rape, orchestrated rape as a weapon of war, then the Nazi Holocaust was not genocide. This is the logic of looking at differences instead of looking at definitions. If we want to go by definitions, then what Israel is engaging in is apartheid. So I say that because there's a whole lot to be gained from understanding that it is apartheid, because we do have historical models of apartheid, and we have guidelines for how to end apartheid. The fact is, you know, there was apartheid in South Africa, and apartheid was defeated by the global movement of boycott, divestment, and sanctions, and so we have apartheid now in Israel, and we can use that same model. So the Palestinians, having looked at their circumstances and looked at where else it happened, I mean, and they've looked at, for example, North America and saw, okay, so there's settler colonialism, and how did the Native Americans respond? They looked at India, nonviolence. They looked at South Africa. They found that the greatest parallels were with the situation of South Africa, where there was a settler colonial state engaging in apartheid. And that was defeated through the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, so they decided that we're going to also engage in that movement as a strategy to end apartheid. So the call for BDS was issued. Oh, I forgot to start my timer, so I know when to stop and when to. All right. The call for BDS was issued in 2005, and the call was issued by almost consensus of what we call the 3 pillars of the Palestinian people. And the 3 pillars of the Palestinian people are people within Israel, that is the Palestinian citizens of Israel, who are second-class citizens who do not have equal rights, as well as Palestinians within historic Palestine, meaning the West Bank and Gaza, and Palestinians in the diaspora, refugees outside. And the refugees outside are the majority of the Palestinian people today. The numbers range between, we are either 65% or 70% of the entire population. So we are the majority, those of us. And all solutions until BDS were looking at the circumstances of only a part of the Palestinian people. We as a Palestinian people really feel the connections, really feel that we are one people, and we wanted a solution that would address our circumstances wherever we happen to be, still within Israel or in the West Bank and Gaza or outside. You know, like, for example, my example is I'm a Palestinian refugee who was born in Iraq and grew up in Lebanon. That doesn't make me any less Palestinian, because I am Palestinian and I've been expelled, and it's not a choice. So 170 civil society organizations from these 3 pillars of the Palestinian people, and organizations that were, you know, none of them were like political leaders or political affiliations or whatever. They're basically things like the teachers' unions, the ladies' stitch and bitch, whatever those groups are called, bakers, school bus drivers, janitors, healthcare workers. These are the civil society organizations that came together and issued the call for BDS and called on the people to, am I there yet? My next. The boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, they said, okay, we're going to want to engage in boycott. We would like the world to support us by engaging in boycott, divestment, and sanctions. These are non-violent punitive measures until Israel complies with international law by accomplishing these 3 things: ending the occupation and dismantling the wall, 2, granting full equality to Palestinian citizens of Israel. And 3, respecting the right of return of Palestinian refugees. These are nonviolent punitive measures. They are a means to an end. They are a strategy. Once we accomplish this, and all 3 of them, basically all we are requiring is that Israel comply with international law. Ending the occupation is illegal. Dismantling the wall has been declared illegal by the International Court of Justice. Granting full equality to the Palestinian citizens of Israel, there's an apartheid system, apartheid is illegal. Respecting the right of return of Palestinian refugees, the right of return of Palestinian refugees is a right, and it is a right that has been recognized by the UN. It's a universal human right. All we're asking is for Israel to basically respect the law. And once it does, we will end the boycott. So just as with South Africa, the boycott was a comprehensive boycott. It was not a boycott only of the few products that were coming out of South Africa. I mean, I'm looking at mostly young people, so you don't remember that, but I hope you've studied something about the boycott of South Africa in the 80s primarily. And basically, the boycott was a comprehensive boycott. It was not only that we didn't buy products that said made in South Africa, imported from South Africa. It was a comprehensive boycott in that it was also academic and cultural. It was the kind of pressure that was put on South Africa, as in, this is not a normal state. We don't have normal relations with a state that is an apartheid state. So for the boycott of South Africa worked to end apartheid because it was comprehensive, because it targeted more than the 2 products that used to come out of South Africa, which were primarily oranges and diamonds. Now, diamonds, you know, to this day, Israeli diamonds also are like its hugest source of income that is not military. But still, boycotting only these is not enough. It has to be comprehensive, which is where we need to do, which is why we need the academic and cultural boycott.